Viognier, one of the toughest varieties to say, one of the greatest things to drink.
Vee-ohn-yay.
One hit wonder.
Hello, TK.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Fucking energetic, to be honest, but yeah, good. Thank you. Great.
Took you 45 minutes to choose the wine, mate.
Well, I'm not gonna. If we're gonna taste wine, I want to taste something decent.
good fun, mate.
The good thing is that
Wandering around a bottle shop's fun, isn't it?
Damien's got way too many decent bottles of wine in there. It's fucking way better than when I was doing it. But yeah, I thought we'd do something.
You cared about the budget a bit better than what he fucking does, that's for sure. Speaking about you, Damo.
Hello, Damo. I think that the reason why this stuck out is that, we were talking about just doing some more wine stuff and tasting some wine. And one of the things that's running around in my head at the moment for a multitude of reasons, just how good Australian wine is right now. And there's so much great wine out there at great prices that it's never been better. There's never been a better time to drink Australian wine.
Yeah,
Simple as that.
Why is that?
It's a combination of things. I think you could say vine age on certain, maybe some of the more emerging regions. The quality of...
What would you call an emerging region?
So basically anything that's sort of been planted in the last 20 or so years. So, if we look at even 30 years, so back in the 90s, like in Australia, a lot of heavy planting started happening there in Tassie. So there's still a lot of young vine material coming out of Tassie, but there's some older stuff coming through as well. And don't get me wrong, there's been fruit there for a very, very long time, but only in small pockets. It really didn't really jump, until sort of the 90s, I imagine. It's probably when it really sort of started to kick off down there. In 2000, a lot of investment, and then 10s, again, a lot of investment, and then now there's even more. And it's an expensive place to make wine because you've got to import everything and then export everything, like everything that you use. So all the glass has to be imported and then exported. Even if you're using Australian glass, it's not getting made in Hobart.
No.
You've got to get stuff in from the mainland.
And is there a wine region in Australia at the moment where it's really spinning your wheels? You're like, they're tearing it up, or it just depends on what wine you're drinking?
It depends on vintage and everything else. I think, in terms of excitement, some of the wines I've seen recently, I tasted some wines yesterday. I tasted a lot of wine yesterday, actually, but looked at all the new single vineyard releases from Henschke, the 21s, and, they're looking as good.
Damo's excited about that.
They're very, very good wines. Yeah. And, there's not a lot of them. Cooler vintage, so volumes are down a little bit. So encourage everyone, if you get access to any of these single vineyards, to go for it because they're great. And, we looked at some, we looked at up to Hill of Grace and looked at a few vintages of the Hill of Grace, which is always a really great exercise. You can sort of see them. We looked at the 21, the 15, and the 05. And it's just great to see them at that point, like a 20-year-old great single vineyard wine from this country. What does it look like? And a lot of people don't get that opportunity very often because they're not cheap.
No.
They're not. And they shouldn't be. They're quality wines that are as good as anything else on the planet. So, those wines, they were great. Another one I looked at yesterday, again, recency bias, because I've just tasted these things in the last 24 hours, was the Yalumba, so Cabernet blend. That thing blew my mind. It was as good a Yarra Valley Cabernet as I've ever seen.
Really?
Yeah. We're going to go long with it, I think. And again, not a big producer, but really just quality. And it's this old school kind of luncheon claret style. Like, it's medium weight, savoury red wine. Sort of, it's 13.5%, 14% alcohol.
So it's not a monster.
It's not a monster at all. It's really, there's an elegance to it.
And when do you buy a certain amount, put it on the list, and make sure you hold some back?
When we can, yes. It depends.
That's really hard to do.
It's really hard. It's really expensive, particularly if we don't have long-term storage. We've got some, for refrigeration in the venues, it means we can keep things a little bit longer. We've got some off-site storage as well. But really, we don't do a lot of it, to be honest. And it's something I'd like to do more of, but it's also just having the budget to do it because you've got to basically park money. The challenge is these days, if you don't buy them, you're not going to get them.
No.
They're gone.
We've done it the last few years.
Yeah.
We're very fortunate in Boca, in the wine store at Boca Arena.
Yeah.
We've got an area above the cold room that we store.
It's a big area up there too, right?
Yeah, and we've been, or I should say, Damien has been religious about when that sort of allocations of good gear comes out, throw 6 up there, and just be patient.
Just forget about them.
Yeah.
And that's like people like, and I've talked about Simon Hill before on this podcast, at Bosco and Bauer Alto. Simon did
How
that
fucking good
for a
is
long
Bosco
time.
just
I went there last week for the first time. I was so upset with myself that I hadn't been there before last week. It's ridiculous. That restaurant is so good. I love that style of eating. But Simon, for a very long period of time, like all of us that were in restaurants at the time, bought the same wines. We just all sold them. He just didn't.
Yeah, right.
Or he put half of them away.
These are a whiny too, right?
Absolutely, yeah. He loves it, and he's very good at it. But he's very good at keeping things. You know, a lot of people get impatient. An accountant gets involved. They're like, sell that shit right now. So him being really, really fastidious about keeping these things means that Bosco list is so good because it's full of stuff. You're like, why the hell do you have that?
Stuff.
Yeah. And some really classic wine in there as well. So yeah, a big fan of that. But look, there's some, again, it just goes back to my original comment. There's so much good wine out there at the moment, and not just Australian, but at the moment I've got a bit of a thing for really looking at local stuff more and more. And I think that, I would recommend to everyone just to get out there and start tasting wine as much as you can at the moment, because it's going to be good. I'm now looking back over the last 20 years and going, why didn't I buy that wine then? Why didn't I keep some? And I think a lot of it was the storage. Again, I've got a few Vintex at home, but I over the course of time, I've just really drunk out of them. I'm not using them for storage. I've still got a few special bottles in there. I think we've talked about that as well. But the fact that I didn't buy like a 6-pack of that every single year for the last 20 years when I've been working in this industry since I was 17, it's like, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
But it's also now it's a bit late.
Yeah.
Because some of those wines that, talk about pricing and increases, everyone's been talking about everything across everything but wine at the moment. It's like, you've got to be joking. Like, I'm seeing offers for things that probably 20 years ago, let's say we might have paid $40 for it, $50 for it. It's now $600, $700. And it's like, what is going on? I mean, there's inflation and there's that. And
we look at things like RWT, Penfolds 389, 707.
Yeah.
Some of those big wines, I remember selling them for, you were buying 389 in the early 2000s for $50-$60.
Less. Yeah, absolutely.
And 707 was like expensive, and that was like $150.
Yeah. And I think that, for me, it's also, this is what happens with a lot of people's cellars as well. They'll go out and the wine they like at the time, they'll go hard on. So when you're young, you generally like big, bold flavors. So often people will fill their cellars with Barossa Shiraz and Coonawarra Cabernet or, big wines. And then they get to the point where they want to start drinking them 20 years later. And their palate
and they're over it.
Hates them. Like, they're like, now I like Pinot and I like Nebbiolo and I like lighter frame things, but I've got all this old, big high alcohol, big tannin wines. Like, what the hell do I do with it? I can't tell you the amount of times people have called me and like, I don't know what to do anymore.
I'm
it's
so
like,
that
what do I do?
person.
Exactly. Everyone's done it.
Oh, mate.
And it's because your palate changes over time.
Last Christmas, I
Gave you my heart.
You're fine. I had a bottle of
sorry, I like that one.
Rhône Rig.
Yep.
And for forever, that's been such an amazingly huge, iconic wine in Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was with some people here. We wanted to celebrate, and I opened it, and mate, it knocked me on my ass.
Yeah. Right.
Legitimately.
Older one or?
Yeah, I think it was like a 12 or a 13.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It was delicious.
It's a big alcohol. Yeah.
Massive wine.
Yeah.
I was pissed as a parrot. 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's like,
well done.
Yeah, but certainly not my style, because I don't drink to get pissed. Like I drink to enjoy it. And I really wanted to savor it, which I did. But it was exactly what you just said then.
I think also you need time with those wines. Like they need to really open up and kind of settle down, like in a glass. It's like, for me, it's like there's always a time and a place for those wines, but it's probably not. You're not going to neck a bottle. No. Like, it's like, give me a great glass. Like, give me a proper glass to drink it out of. Give me at the right temperature with something that's going to work with it. Like, for that kind of a wine, for me, it's like, I need a big, rich dish. It's like, give me a venison on a beetroot risotto or something like that, where it's like, that's going to handle the flavor. It's going to handle the booze. But just take your time with it. You know? And we don't always have that as well. But that style of wine, I enjoy them. I don't want to drink a lot of them. No. It's like everything these days. I don't want to drink a lot of anything, really. I'd like to taste more things. That's what people say, what are you drinking at home? I'm like, well, it depends what I've got open. Like, I could have 6 bottles open at any point in time. Yeah, generally. It's going to be something like that. But anyway, what
are we drinking?
We're gonna drink some Viognier. Now, just to be clear, it is pronounced Viognier. The thing with Viognier in this country is that we've had a really interesting sort of history with it. And Yalumba in particular, and this is the Yalumba, fucking hell, this creep from the side. Sorry, Corey, there's your little splash. That's all you're allowed. You'll neck that in 2 seconds. We'll give him a snifter of wine. There we go.
Better pull one for the chef.
What I love about this wine in particular, so this is what I would call benchmark Australian Viognier. There's nothing, I don't think, personal opinion, people can argue with me, I don't think there's much better with this. Let's let TK go and give Juzzy a
Very fruity.
glass of, you're very fruity, mate.
It's like the smell.
Okay, so we don't talk about wines being fruity, because when you say fruity, what do you think about straight away when I say, if I say something's fruity, what do you think of?
Wine. Like,
Give me something else that you'd describe as fruity.
I guess like
Your shirt?
a little bit acid.
No.
I think
fruity.
I'm thinking like tin pineapples.
Okay.
Is kind of where I go.
Okay. So what are tin pineapples?
Like
Don't overthink it.
fruit.
Are they dry or are they sweet?
They're sweet.
Super sweet.
Yeah.
So when you say fruity,
So I should be saying sweet.
no, incorrect. The absolute opposite of that. Saying fruity leads a lot of people to think that it's going to be sweet. Okay?
Yeah.
This wine's not sweet. It has fruit sweetness and it is fruit driven, but the wine is dry. Like technically speaking, this wine is dry.
So when you say dry, it's minimal sugar.
Hardly any sugar, residual sugar. This would probably be under 5 grams, I imagine, probably less
Right. Per bottle or?
per litre.
Right.
So we always talk about residual sugar. So residual sugar left after fermentation per litre. So you think about things like dry table wine, red wine is about 4. Bone dry Riesling under 1, depending on the wine. Coca-Cola, a couple of hundred. Dessert wine anywhere from sort of 150 to 450. So this wine doesn't have it doesn't have the sugar sweetness, but it has fruit sweetness.
Yeah.
Fruit sweetness you taste, sugar sweetness you feel.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so if you think about a dessert wine where it sort of envelops your mouth, it encases
Viscous
it's
and-
viscous, it's
yeah.
textural. That's the sugar doing that. Okay,
Yeah.
there's to get super technical, there's a difference between sucrose, fructose, glucose.
Yeah.
So they all do different things. They're all sweet. They all do different things.
Yeah.
So we're talking about fructose mainly in this. It's because it's made from fruit. Just in for those playing at home, this wine is made from grapes, but it's an interesting variety because it's very aromatic. It's one of those things where you pick up a glass of Viognier, and I hope I'm right. Yep. There's a couple of descriptors that should be there every single time, like in terms of a fruit profile. For Viognier, I haven't had enough of this yet. We're always talking about generally some form of apricot. So whether it's
Apricot straight away.
And then it's like, again, if we're going to be the wine nerds, it's like, okay, apricot. Is it fresh apricot? Is it cooked apricot? Which one?
I'm going cooked apricot.
Cooked? Okay. Could be apricot skin, could be apricot seed, kernel.
Holding up to that light, it almost has like a orange sort of.
Okay, because you're holding up to the light and you can't see anything.
Stewed apricots for me.
Stewed apricots, okay, so you're saying cooked. So what I mean by that, Corey, is when you're holding it up, all you're seeing is what's behind it.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at wine, we're looking down. We want the light coming through it, and you want a white background. So like in wine shows, you have to have a certain amount of light, and you have to have a white background so you can see the colour clearly. So when we're assessing wine. But if you see all these lovely pictures of winemakers doing this in the magazines, no one ever fucking does that. Because all I can see is what's behind that. This to me is brown because of the curtain. From above.
This
So you
one,
want
mate,
that
like
that
this.
underneath it.
Corey.
Corey. Now I don't know what you're doing over there. You're building a Dutch oven with a glass of Viognier. Yeah, there we go. That's how you see the colour. But you want the light above you, so that light's not going to be enough. You do it under this light, you might be able to see the colour, but you're taking way too time on the colour. I'm bored. Okay. So, and again, I don't want to tell anyone that you have to smell apricot in this wine, but there's always, for me and for everyone, generally speaking, with Viognier, it's really clearly apricot of some variety, some style. And again, there's no wrong answers because your palate's different to mine, it's different to TK's. We're all going to smell something different based on our own experiences and our own catalogue of flavours and aromas that are in our head. Because, and we've talked about this before, if like someone says, oh, it smells like orange blossom, it's like, I don't know what the fuck that smells like.
Yeah.
How am I meant to tell you how to describe that if I don't know what it is?
One of the best ones in Australia is Coonawarra Cabernet with mint, chopped mint slices.
Eucalyptol, yeah.
And I go, the person that told me that, it will stay with me for the rest of my life.
Yeah, you probably hate them because that's all you can smell.
But it is such a fucking true smell.
It's like McLaren Vale Shiraz generally is cherry ripe.
Is it?
Dark chocolate,
that's
cherry.
Do the same thing to me.
So you do that, there's plenty of those kind of things. Some of those things can be psychosomatic as well. So, and that's wine in general. I can go, oh, it's definitely apricot kernel. Everyone's like, oh yeah, you're right. It's like
the really interesting one is to give a glass of wine to a kid, not to drink, but to smell.
Yeah,
because
100%.
they're not tainted with an opinion.
Absolutely,
they go,
and they don't look at this and go, oh, it's Yalumba, this is going to be good.
Yeah,
or oh, this is Yalumba, it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They don't do that. It's just smells like grapes. Yeah. I remember Lachlan was probably about 12, I reckon. I gave him, he's younger than that. And I handed him a glass of Pinot, exactly that. And I was like, smell that. What do you smell? And he's like, strawberries. I started crying. I'm like, fuck, no, not quite. But it was like, yes, totally. And that's the thing. But it's like, that doesn't actually matter. No. Really, at the end of the day. Like, we can sit here and talk about this wine for an hour and a half. Comes down to do you like it or not.
Yeah.
Simple. Yummy or yes. Yummy or not. So, Viognier is a grape variety. It comes from the Rhône Valley in France, so it's one of the three principal grape varieties there in the white. So it's Marsanne, Roussanne, Vee-ohn-yay. They're often blended together as well in that part of the world and also in Australia.
When they're blended together, are they called something else?
No, it's just generally you're going to see something that's like VMR or RMV or whatever it might be. But those things together, they sort of complement each other. They're all textural. They've got some, the Roussanne's got a bit more spice. The Marsanne's a little bit more oily. Depending on when the Viognier peaked, it can get real oily, real sort of rich. And that's where I was sort of heading with this, is that Yalumba have really sort of pioneered Viognier in this country, and Louisa Rose is incredible with what they do with this program. And this wine now, so we used to, in Australia, we had this thing where we need to benchmark ourselves against the rest of the world. Like, we need to work out if this Viognier is any good compared to the Viognier from the Rhône Valley, which is kind of a teaching moment for everyone as well, and it's always great to do that. I know for a fact that about 10 years ago, French producers in the Rhône Valley were buying this wine to benchmark against their own.
Really?
Because what Yalumba have managed to do here is capture the essence of Viognier in terms of aromatics and flavour and everything else, but not let it get oily. So not let it get fat. There's still tension in the wine. It's still got acid, it's got drive, it's got all these other things. And they're like, fucking how do we do that? So I love the fact that they're now looking at us.
It's a great wine to take to a dinner party because it would appease so many people. Chardonnay, sweeter Riesling drinkers, it's Sauvignon Blanc. Yeah. If you're a Sauvignon Blanc drinker, you'd happily drink that, I reckon.
And this is the thing about these aromatic and textural varieties, where it kind of sits in the middle. If we've got bone dry Riesling at one end and we've got big fat rich Chardonnay at the other end, this guy is dead in the middle. Where you've got a little bit of texture, a little bit of acid, everything's in check, everything's balanced. I said this wine for me is energetic, like it's vibrant, and matching wise, you can do a lot with it. It's really diverse, and I don't know. I just think, often at Viognier, it's hard to say, so a lot of people just won't order it because it's like, how do I pronounce that? And this, does, I don't even know if it says Viognier on there. It does now. It says, so it's the Virgilius Eden Valley Viognier. And I think that, a lot of people, when they're nervous about wine, they don't want to they don't want to look like an idiot, right? So they're not going to order something like this. So, but these are the things where it's like, get a taste of it. Taste of Viognier when you're out next. Go to your nearest winery or nearest, retailer, and get them to open some Viognier and see what you think. There was Yalumba actually ran a campaign, I don't know how long ago this was now, where they were really pushing Vee-ohn-yay, and there was big billboards of it, and it had like the phonetic breakdown, Vee-ohn-yay, and it was like it was cool as hell. I don't know if it worked for them, if they sold anymore, but and the other thing with Vee-ohn-yay is that in the Rhône Valley as well, particularly in the north, it's blended with Shiraz. So you'll generally put in a percentage of Shiraz to give you, a percentage of Viognier into your Shiraz, particularly in places like Côte Rôtie, where you get this aromatic lift, you get this almost bonus coming out of, it's like, God, this Shiraz is aromatic, isn't it? It's like, yeah, it's not just Shiraz.
Because there's a few people in Australia that do
Shiraz,
it too.
Viognier, Clonakilla, most famous for that. That's their thing, but that's based off
I always
Rôtie.
thought that it softened it.
It can as well. It can soften tannin, but it's more so used for aromatics. Yeah,
makes sense. When you say that and you've got a glass of it in front of you, it makes a lot of fucking sense to me.
And
what a fucking cracking wine that
absolutely.
is. Oh my God.
Yeah, and the new Chronicle of Shiraz Viognier is just I mean, they're all good. I've never had a bad one.
Canberra, right?
Yeah, Canberra district. So it's really sort of around that Murrum-Bateman kind of area. So technically not a region from, but we don't, Canberra itself, ACT doesn't exist in the wine world. So Canberra district, the wine region, is actually part of New South Wales.
Yeah, right. Gotcha.
Very confusing when you look at a wine list. It's like Canberra district, New South Wales. It's like, what the fuck does that mean? But that's the correct way to do it. So there is a lot of people that have been using Viognier in Australia for a long period of time, but they don't have to label it, because in Australia we have labelling laws that if it's under 15%, so if it's 14.9% Viognier, it wouldn't be, because you can't drink. You wouldn't be able to drink that. It'd be horrendous. But if it's 14.9% and under, or 15%, 49.9 and under, it doesn't have to be labeled. So it can just say Shiraz. But you're picking up like, oh, this thing's pretty. Why is that? It's probably because there's a lick of this in this. I once did an exercise at Wira, and they've been making Shiraz Viognier for a long time as well, where we were presented some wines, some non-finished, unfinished red wines that were there to be blended with Viognier for a final blend. And the test was who could make the best blend closest to where they're going to end up when they produce the wine. And I remember I was sitting with Tony Harper from Craft in Red Hill. Hello, Tony. And there was three reds and one white, and we were meant to put a percentage of the white into the red, and then whoever created the one that they thought was best won this thing. Anyway, we put forward a wine. They're like, this is great. Yeah, definitely. It was awesome. We won. It was great. They're like, oh, how much Viognier did you put in there? It was like 0. And they're like, what do you mean? It's like, we didn't put any Viognier in. They're like, I know everyone, all the winemakers were sort of smiling, and they're like, well, and we're like, what? And it's like, there's already 2% Viognier in that wine. So that's how much impact Viognier can have. If you put 1% more, it can throw it out completely. So it's a really cool variety to use in the reds for that lift.
And is it normal for it to be oaked?
It depends on the style.
So there's no normal.
No, there's no real normal. But traditionally, yes. But generally older oak. So it's not necessarily an oaky character. You don't want the oaky character. It's probably more so used for texture, for building texture and complexity as well. So I'm not 100% sure. I wouldn't imagine it is. It's probably second use. Or it might be a small percentage of new, but it wouldn't be much. They don't want the oaky character. They just want the texture.
Old French oak.
There we go. It's nice when I get one right.
So when they say old, what would that be?
Could be 2 years old. Could be 5 years old.
Oh, so it doesn't really matter.
All they want is basically it to be a seasoning. So the younger the oak, like the newer the oak, the more intense it is. Yeah. So as it goes through, so you'll do a season, you'll use new oak in your reds and maybe a little bit of Chardonnay, a percentage of your Chardonnay if you're doing that. Different coopers as well, different forests for the oak, and that's a whole other conversation. Wild ferment as well. Natural yeast, yeah. So nothing. But do you think that makes a big difference? Huge. Yeah. Depending on the style of the wine, but. And what are the characteristics you pick up when you in wild yeast? Depending on the variety, and it also depends on the yeast because. There's so many different strains of yeast. And what we talk about when we talk about natural yeast or wild yeast, it's basically everything you need to make wine is in or on the grape. So, when you go to Coles or you go to a fruit shop, I should say, I want to give them a shout out. You go to a fruit shop and there's big red grapes there and you touch one and there's like a white film on the outside. That's yeast. So that's all you need. You could take them home. You're going to make something. It's not going to be wine. So they're not cracking open fresh bags of yeast and tipping them in? We do. Yeah, really? Absolutely. Inoculated yeast, 100%. Yeah. You can introduce it because when you use inoculated yeast or packet yeast, you know what the result's going to be. You know what it's going to ferment at temperature-wise. You know what the aromatics it's going to produce. You know all those things. It's very straightforward. So those big label wines that you commercial wines, they're making 2 million bottles a year. That's going to be that. Commercial yeast. Yeah, absolutely right. And Australia's been big with that. We've really driven that. There's a massive market there, right? Huge. But Sauvignon Blanc needs that. Yeah, well, those needs to be exactly the same. That's exactly right. Yeah. The wines you want to taste the same every single time, you need to control the controllables. Yeah. Yeast is one of those things. Natural yeast, not so much. So you could get some funky flavors in there. You could kind of the same as donuts, right? It's alive, and you don't. It's fucking hard to be friends with it sometimes. Absolutely, and you can sometimes get it wrong. Yeah. And there's plenty of wineries that tell you stories about times where they've fucked it up. But the wild yeast is coming off the grape. It's not being added in any way, shape, or form. It's off the grape. Often, there's a story about a very famous winery in Beechworth where everyone loves this wine. It went to market last week and sold out in 2 minutes. Unbelievable. And there was a winery down the road that decided one night to sort of drive in with their buckets, their big 1-ton picking bins, and just leave it there overnight to get the yeast from that vineyard because they wanted that yeast.
Is that how quickly the yeast?
Probably not going to happen exactly like that, but worth a punt.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the story that they told in their marketing. It was like, oh, it's the same yeast as this very, very famous winery next door, just down the road. And it's like, how the
rhymes with Iaconda?
It might rhyme with that, but yeah. And
is that right? That's a fucking great story.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's like our menu conversation. Put the bao buns on, and suddenly you'll be busy.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think it's got too much to do with the yeast.
It's not just that, but yeah. But that's the thing. It's like when you're looking for an edge, it's
they probably would have
cool
given
story.
you some if you had have asked.
Totally, exactly. And that's the thing. They probably maybe they did know. I think this story has probably been handed down 100 times. Yeah. But I'm actually catching up with that other one, the big name soon. So hopefully I'll be able to get to the bottom of that and work it out. But that's the thing that yeast has a massive impact, and the wild yeast generally, you're going to have a little bit more funk. There's going to be some more aromatics there that aren't squeaky clean.
And is there a rule with Vee-ohn-yay
for it to be in oak and to be wild ferment?
No, not at all. I think the rules, particularly when it comes to Viognier, we can do whatever the hell we want. Right. We always have anyway. That's what we do in Australia. We don't play by the rules, and we push things that then the rest of the world takes on. So, inoculated yeast, I think that's something that we really drew. I think it really came out of UC Davis, and then we jumped on it because we started making a lot of bulk wine, particularly in the 80s and 90s and things in boxes and things like that. You needed to control it. So I get why people do that. I also get why people like wild yeast or natural yeast, because there is some elements there that you could argue that how can you show off the terroir of the vineyard or the space or that sense of place if you're using yeast out of a packet?
Yep. And are there many big players in the Vee-ohn-yay field in Australia who do it really, really well?
Vee-ohn-yay.
That's what I said.
No, Vi. I'm going to correct you till you get it right. Vee-ohn-yay.
I'm going to keep saying that. Just a minute.
When you say big players, there's plenty of people.
How many?
Yalumba will probably own the market of Vee-ohn-yay.
Well, how many bottles is that in comparison to, give me a comparison to Sauvignon Blanc versus Vee-ohn-yay in Australia?
In terms of sales?
Yeah.
Oh, this would be 1% versus 100.
Right.
Yeah.
But is that just because the Sauvignon Blanc market is so massive?
Yeah, definitely. But also, it's like, again, people don't know how to pronounce this. What happens with Viognier in particular is generally someone will taste it, fall in love with it, and that's all they're going to drink.
Yeah, sure.
They're
I poured that at my wedding.
They become the ambassador of Viognier.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing is that, it's like Malbec is another variety like that, because people will have a Malbec once, or they'll go to South America and they'll have Malbec and they'll be like, I am now the king of Malbec. I only want to drink Malbec.
Or Rioja.
Everyone's got something like that they fall in love with. But yeah, there's not a lot. We have a fair bit planted, but in terms of overall production, it's a bit tiny compared to everything else. But like I said, Clonakilla, they do straight Viogniers now, as well as, adding it to the Shiraz. There's plenty around. Yeah. And Eden Valley, what I love about Eden Valley, and a lot of people don't maybe understand this, so you've got Barossa, and within the Barossa is the Eden Valley and the Barossa Valley, both very, very different to each other. The Eden Valley is slightly higher altitude, so a little bit cooler, better for retaining natural acidity, which is great for this kind of a variety. And these vineyards they're in a really pretty place as well, and they are high-ish when it comes to the Eden. But yeah, I love the fact that the key thing, every time I think of this wine, I think about a whole group of people sitting around a table in the Rhône Valley in France, frustrated that they can't do this. And it's like, because we have this balance, we have, the French, not all of them, but historically speaking, we used to be called, Australian wine was called sunshine in a glass, because it's like, that's all we were, it was just pure fruit. And it's like, but this isn't just pure fruit. There's so much more to this. There's structure, there's finesse, it's not as savoury as you're going to get in the Rhône, because we do lead with fruit. We can't argue with that because of our climate. It's just like we do have more sunshine hours in that part of the world. So yeah, we're going to get it ripe. But the trick with Viognier, the trick with most wines, most grapes, and when you're picking, is working out when to pick. Yeah. And if you miss that window, like if they're a week later, this is a completely different wine. This is bigger, it's richer, it's fatter, it's higher in alcohol, it's unenjoyable. Yeah. That's not even a word. Not enjoyable. Is unenjoyable a word? Should be. But yeah, I think that, these are the kinds of styles of wine that, again, we talk about people drinking maybe Shiraz early and then developing into Pinot drinkers. We probably, if you're a Sauvignon Blanc drinker and you're going to end up at Chardonnay, you're going to find this somewhere along the trail. And people either stop here and go, I'm okay with that, I don't need to go any bigger. Or they're like, fuck, that's really interesting, I've got a time and a place for that.
And what would you eat with that?
Yeah, good question. Lots of things. Traditionally in the Rhône, you're generally looking at river fish, things that, again, that goes together, grows together kind of thing. So lighter.
When you say river fish, are you talking
like trout?
So oily.
Yeah. And quite strong flavoured fish as well. It can handle that, but like smoked trout and this.
It's a big one.
Hello. Yeah.
But you know what my head goes straight to is scallops with either a not Bernays,
Beurre Blanc or
something like that.
Noisette.
Yeah, something like that, or an eggy style
Sabayon sort of stuff. Yeah,
Sabayon would be nice. Blowtorch at the end, or I reckon it'd go really, really well with that. Something with a bit of fat, like the sauce with some fat.
And that's because you've got acid.
Yeah.
You've still got acid in this wine. So it's not just big. There's power, but it's coiled power.
Yeah.
This thing for me is like, so when I talk
it's
about
really
tension,
good. When you say that,
Yeah.
it makes me understand it so well. Like that's coiled.
Yeah. So if I was tasting this, I would more than likely, and I use this tasting, I used it a couple of times yesterday with some of the Henschke wines as well. It's like Crouching Tiger. It's like, it's ready to go, but it could become a dragon.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm just going to sit here for a little while, but at some stage I'm going to come out. And that's the joy of aging wine. It's like you want to get it when it becomes the hidden tiger. Sauvignon.
Yep, scallops for Sauvignon. I reckon would be like roasted.
Tasty, yeah.
Really, really good.
The other thing, for some reason that I always, it's weird to say this, but roast chicken, always work well with Viognier as well, like little birds, delicious. And pumpkin.
Yeah, right.
There's something about roast pumpkin and Viognier I really like. I don't know why it is, but you think about roast pumpkin, it might be some pine nuts and that kind of
sweet.
Yeah, and then you've got
roast in the oven, so
a little bit of
chewy
richness. Yeah,
on the edges.
Yeah, perfect. Like really good pumpkin, just roast. They don't need much on it. It's just olive oil, salt and pepper. Just
pumpkin
that's
risotto.
all you need. Yeah, pumpkin risotto, delicious.
Sage.
Brown
butter.
But again, you've got the acid to cut through the butter, the mascarpone, all the other levels of fat that go into really good risotto. I honestly, I could talk about Viognier for a while, but particularly this style, I think I really like. Because it used to be what would happen with Yalumba. They had their Eden Valley Viognier, which is probably a, $25 wine. And then they had this, which is about double that. And one of the things that the Eden Valley was generally unoaked, really kind of clean and crisp and picked earlier. And then Virgilius was picked riper and richer and was a much bigger wine, like 10, 15, 20 years ago. Now it's like, hello. I've seen this wine progress over time, and the Yalumba's just got better and better and better at it. And now, again, and vintage specifics, but you get this wine that has that coiled tension, and then you just want to. I would neck this wine. This would not last
fucking
long
delicious,
at all.
It is really, really good.
It's medicinal.
And if you're lucky enough to find yourself in the Barossa, you've got to make sure you go to Samuel Smith Yalumba. Yeah. They do it so well. And I think that tasting room there, when you can
incredible.
get because there's a few different tiers of wines.
Yeah,
you don't need to spend a fortune.
No.
And even if you get the boss hold, it's not. It won't make you broke.
No.
But you'll try this, and some of the greatest wines this country will ever produce.
And I think one of the things with Yalumba,
fire crackling and you can get a little charcuterie board.
Go in winter.
Spend a couple of hours there.
Yeah, and that's
really enjoy yourself.
Listen to the people that are there because they have the knowledge.
Yep.
Like that is one of the great cellar doors because the people are working.
The cooperage there as well. Exactly. It's worthwhile having a good look around there, eh?
And
they do it so well.
Absolutely. And I think the thing with Yalumba for me is that a lot of people would look at the brand Yalumba and go, it's a big brand. And it's like,
who fucking cares?
They make a lot of wine, but they're family owned. They've
been broke.
They've been very close to not making it a number of times, as have most people in the wine industry. But there's something to be said about a brand of this size that remains family owned. Yep. Like there's something in that.
And year in, year out, churning out delicious,
quality.
Solid, quality
at
wines.
every level as well. Yep. Like, you got the Y series, you got the entry level stuff.
And unashamedly happy to make boxes of wine,
Totally.
and probably makes a fortune off it.
Yeah.
There's a market there for it.
Absolutely.
Like, they're not snobs, but fuck me dead. You could legitimately put some of their best wine on a table with some of the greatest wines in the world, and it wouldn't be out of place.
Like those, a couple of the more recent releases of the Calia, they're just phenomenal. KG, it's just, he's, as a winemaker, he's just getting better and better and better. And actually, you didn't call me last time you were up, KG. A little upset about that. That's fine. I'll be talking to you about that. But these wines, when you look at those, they're benchmark wines as well. And, but they're very Australian. They're not trying to be anything else. It's like, this is a category creator.
Yeah.
When, as I said, when the Rhône Valley producers are going, well, hang on, we need to pay attention to this. There's something behind that. If
you're growing that great varietal in Australia, at some stage you're putting that in the glass. Going,
100%.
Can we do that? How does it rack up against that?
Yeah, exactly. And that's part of the fun.
Yeah.
The other thing I think they lead into really well is Shiraz Cabernet blends.
Yeah.
That's an Australian thing. So things like Signature, things like, in particular, those wines that are just so good. And those wines talk of where they're from really, really quickly.
Yeah.
It's like, these are clearly this part of the world.
Yeah.
And they're a certain style, and that's just what it is. So it's like, why are we avoiding that? For me, I'm like, I love that stuff.
Yeah.
I love the history of Australian wine. We have incredible wineries, incredible history.
To be an 8 out of 10 for that long.
Yeah.
Year in, year out.
It's hard.
When every single thing about farming is trying to fuck you.
Ludicrous.
And to be able to get that into a barrel, then get it into a bottle, and then get it sold, and people on the other side of the world going, how fucking delicious is that?
Yeah.
I sit back and I go, all these people should be celebrated on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
Because it's so fucking hard.
Absolutely.
But, that is truly and will remain one of the great Australian white wines, I reckon.
Mm.
They do such a great job.
I actually think I need to get more of that. That's yummy.
Really?
It's really, there's a spiciness to that as well. There's almost like a white peppery kind of thing that I really, really dig.
Yeah, I can't get over the stewed apricots. Now it's just in my head.
You can't get away from it.
I could have an eyeful at steak and it's going to taste like a stewed apricot.
Anyway, that's it. Yalumba Virgilius Viognier, a little deep dive.
Welcome to the world of Vee-ohn-yay, Corey. What do you reckon?
Vee-ohn-yay.
That's what I said.
Vee-ohn-yay, technically.
Yeah, it was nice. Should we start the podcast now?
No, fuck.
No, that was delicious. It
was delicious.
That was different, and I like how you spoke about the crouching tiger, hidden dragon, because
the coiled wine is so true.
I took my time drinking it, and then on my final sip, I was like,
it's nearly ready.
This tastes like a different wine from the first.
That's a temperature thing as well.
Yeah.
It was too cold coming out of the fridge, so now it's probably at the temperature you want to drink it at.
It's when you sometimes see people doing that.
Yeah, right.
So just warming it up.
Because
when it's too cold, you don't get the aromatics. You don't get...
No.
So, it's really huge.
Unbelievable for that.
There was almost like this, as towards the end, there was almost like this, I don't want to... No. It was delicious, but there was almost like this bitterness to it.
Kerosene.
Mm-hmm.
Alcohol.
What you're talking about is phenolic bitterness right at the back of the palate.
Yeah, right.
It's just from the skins.
Yeah.
You get it from the skins and seeds, but
Gotcha.
this wine doesn't spend hardly any time with its skins, but there's always going to be some inherent phenolic bitterness in these wines.
Yeah, right. And does it come out as it warms up?
Yeah, it's going to, yeah. You're going to feel it right at the back. Taste that now. You'll see it again even more. But when we've talked about this before, but, temperature of wine is such a critical thing.
Oh, so important.
Yeah.
You're going to see it even again.
Yummy.
Yeah, and that's the whole point. If you let it warm up, you'll see way more complexity. Way more complexity.
I find it fascinating how wine can change within 20 minutes of it being in a glass.
Totally.
It's crazy. But I don't know how many times I've opened a bottle of wine, in particular some European stuff that I'm not all over.
Yeah.
And I thought it was fucked.
Yeah. Then you go back to it.
It's just it's like the sulfur blows out of it.
I was at dinner last week, all wine people there. It was a wine that was served. We're like, that wine's corked. We left it on the table. We came back an hour later and everyone's like, is it? I was like, wait a second.
Or am I just pissed?
And I was like, hang on a second. And we got back to it and I was like, no, it definitely is. But it appeared less, And so it's still, unfortunately corked. But happens. That's why we love Screw Cap.
Screw Cap for the win.
# fuck you cork. All right.
Lovely.
That
sounded good.
It's a wrap.
Today's episode of Viognier is gum.
Viognier.
Viognier.
Is Viagra.
Vee-ohn-yay.
Vee-ohn-yay is not it.
Viagra.
That's a different thing altogether. I'm going to be cutting out the entire last 3 minutes of this episode.
No, Vee-ohn-yay, very nice. I enjoyed that.
Very nice.
Very nice.